Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 73. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Friday, Steelers Nation. Dave, getting ready for the final weekend of the 2024 regular season, our first show in 2025. So happy New Year's to everybody, and hopefully it becomes a happy New Year for this Pittsburgh Steelers team. Really needing a win this weekend, this Saturday night against the Bengals to lock up the 5 seed, have an outside chance at the division, but more importantly, just break this losing streak heading into the postseason. So they've been a couple days since we last spoke, since we did the Tuesday show. A ton has happened since, so we got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, happy Friday, happy New Year. Steelers need to start off the new year 1-0, that's for sure. It would certainly give them nice momentum going into the playoffs here as well. But yeah, you're right. A lot has transpired just, housekeeping wise alone since we were on a couple of days ago. So I'll let you start rattling that off and we'll discuss it there.
Yeah, I want to talk about that in just one moment. But before I forget, just a note, our David O does a great job with the weekly Friday 5 for the site, which will go up today at 5:45 p.m. Eastern time, our final one for the contest period, for the one that actually counts for the money. So be sure to check that out, answer the questions we asked, just a couple simple ones, who's going to win, a couple other fun over-under type stuff. So check that out later today on Friday. And our thanks to David O, who does a great job compiling all that on a weekly basis. All right, Dave, let's get into the news of the week. And that is, as you said, some transactions, some players returning to health, not just guys like Joey Porter Jr. and Ben Skoranek, who will play this weekend after missing the Chiefs game, but some players who were on those injured lists, IR and reserve PUP, returning to practice. Interesting news there. And rookies, receiver Roman Wilson and defensive lineman Logan Lee, they have been designated to return. And linebacker Cole Holcomb, out since that scary, serious November 2023 knee injury, he has returned to practice too. Again, from that knee injury last year on a limited fashion, Holcomb has these past 2 days. So really cool for him. Big milestone. Certainly no guarantee these guys are going to be on a field for the team this year. I would not expect them to be activated and play against the Bengals, but important steps for all three.
Yeah, and kind of when you look at the this being the final week of the regular season, and the fact that these guys have probably been ready to resume practice for a couple of weeks now, there's no reason not to open up their 21-day windows and then see what happens at that point. I think that happened on morning of New Year's Eve on the 31st there, and I went right to Twitter because I saw people getting excited about these three guys having their 21-day window open, and I wrote, even though the 21-day windows for Cole Holcomb, Roman Wilson, and Logan Lee have now been open, there's no guarantee that any of the three make it to being activated to the 53 before the season ends. Certainly unlikely to happen by Saturday, meaning tomorrow, and a bit of a stretch for a wild card as well, barring other injuries creating needs. So I think this is just part of the process of getting those guys out there. You're at the end of the season. You're going to get additional designated to return 2 more of those during the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Should you need them, it made sense to go ahead and the 2 that were on IR in Roman Wilson and Logan Lee. At the very least, just get them out there running around, get them back involved in practices. A guy like Roman Wilson might be further along, at least from or closer to maybe being able to help this team should they, progress to the playoffs there. But, even so, he's missed so much practice time. once you activate any one of these guys to the 53, should you end up doing it, you have to have a corresponding move, yada yada. Roman Wilson's not a guy that's probably going to help you on special teams either. That's another thing that's working against him. And a guy like Cole Holcomb, you got probably the thing with him is you got so many. You already have five inside linebackers on the 53. He's another guy that you would probably need an injury to take place at the inside linebacker position. He would probably be the most likely of these three to be activated to the 53 during moving past this final regular season game, but only because of an injury somewhere else on the roster, because he obviously has a lot of NFL experience, could help you out on special teams as well too. So it's good that these guys are out there, especially the two rookies and Roman Wilson and Logan Lee. Man, you can never get guys enough practices during the rookie season. So that's good to see. But I would be a bit surprised unless this team moved past past the wild card round of the playoffs for any of these guys to see the 53-man roster.
That's my read of it too. And like you said, those IR to return slots, Pittsburgh had 2 left in the regular season. They basically are bonus slots because there was no other real need for them. As you said, you get 2 additional ones for the postseason. If somebody got hurt, knock on wood, Saturday night and they had to go on IR, you're going to miss 4 games. That's basically out for the rest of the entire season. So you probably just wouldn't put somebody on IR at that point and hope they just could come back and treat them as a normal inactive. So you have the free spots to basically work with, get some young guys working out. And frankly, David would not be surprised if come next week, you hear some more guys return to practice. Maybe Troy Fautanu if he's healthy enough, maybe a CJ Henderson, maybe somebody else with those 2 bonus IR 2 return slots. Because as you said, at the worst, get some young guys, some practice reps to go finish out their first year that have unfortunately really been lost due to injuries. Wilson with the ankle in training camp, the hamstring mid-season, and Logan Lee, people probably forget he was even on IR with a calf injury, but that happened right before week 1, and so good for him to get some reps as well. Holcomb, though, I think it's just a great personal milestone for him. I'm sure he's had an unbelievable journey back just to get back to practice in terms of those long nights, early days, constant rehab, trying to stay engaged, be with your team. I think Pittsburgh's done a good job of making sure he's been part of the team, traveling to road games, being around the group. All that's really important. So I don't know what his status is for now, where the future will he be on this team in 2025? Certainly questionable, but happy for him personally to get back to this point.
Yeah, he even had said, to the media the other day that he kind of didn't know if he's going to come back from this, and that was a serious injury at the time. The way I can still see it in my head going back to last season when that knee injury happened. So, yeah, look, I mean, you never know what's going to transpire on in through the summer and all like that. And like I said, if he's healthy enough to be out there moving around and practice again, you never know what's going to happen in this thing past Saturday against the Bengals. And if you get into the playoffs and you get, let's say past the Texans or whoever I'm already trying to speak it into existence, whoever you play in the wild card round. And if you have any injuries, at least he's got, somebody that could probably have the best chance of these 3 to be activated to the 53-man roster.
Well, let me ask you this. Roman Wilson, a lot of chatter about him, people advocating that he should get the hat and get an opportunity. Pittsburgh's passing game has struggled. The receivers have not looked super impressive. Wilson has been a full participant in practice, so on that basis, he seems to be further along than Lee and Holcomb. Is there any reason to think that Wilson could potentially come back or should come back?
Well, he definitely won't for this game because he's been ruled as out on the injury report. So
right, but for the playoffs.
Yeah, for the playoffs, unless there's an injury, Alex, I can't see it happening. I really can't. If this was a guy that could give you something on special teams on top, he's just missed so much time, and he's played 5 snaps in one game earlier this season, and I would be absolutely shocked if it wasn't injury related that he gets activated to the 53.
Agreed. I'm not expecting it, but we'll keep watching. We'll see what happens next week and go from there. Arthur Smith did briefly mention or talked about more week to week, and of course, those are not his decisions to make. So really, kind of gave a non-answer to Wilson's status. And as you said, Wilson and all the injured list guys, Holcomb, Lee, have been ruled out. They will not be activated. Will not play against the Bengals. So let's stick with the injury situation, health of the team. Beyond that, Dave, it's in a really good place overall. Many guys practicing in full on Thursday. We have the final injury report out because the game is on Saturday. So the final one was released on Thursday. Joey Porter Jr., he's going to play. He has no game status. Same with Ben Skoranek. Same with Jalen Warren. Same with Jalen Fields. The only player who has not been ruled out, one of those injured list guys, is questionable. That's Donte Jackson with a back injury that flared up midweek. He was limited on Wednesday and Thursday, so his status seems to be unclear. He spoke with the media. Sounds like he's going to try to give it a go, but you just never know until that inactive list comes in. So if he can't go, then you could see James Pierre and Corey Trice get the nod.
I was trying to look back to see questionable guys on the injury report that ended up, whether or not they ended up playing or not. And let's see here. Most of them, a good number of them, ended up not playing, and that includes Donte Jackson back in a couple of games ago against Baltimore. He ended the week as questionable. I don't. They didn't downgrade him on that next day either. I don't believe. I'm looking at PFR, and sometimes PFR doesn't update the stuff, if they get an upgrade or a downgrade past the final injury report. But it looks like he ended up being inactive for that Ravens game after ending the week as questionable. If you go back even like last week, Justin Fields ended as questionable, did not play. Cordell Patterson back in against, no, I guess, no, Larry Ogunjobi. I had it wrong here. Larry Ogunjobi was questionable for the week against Baltimore, ended up not playing. George Pickens was obviously questionable for that game against Cleveland, ended up not playing. Trying to see how many guys ended up questionable that ended up playing, and I don't think there's many of them throughout the season.
Okay, so maybe a sign that Jackson won't go. It seems to be a real coin flip. It probably just depends how his back feels that day through warm-ups, and you take it from there. So that's the one name that is unclear of if he'll play or not against the Bengals.
I haven't double checked their stuff here, but PFR has number of times reported questionable 18 times, and games played of those players 4.
So pretty low percentage actually there. So
right,
useful note, but we'll see.
And obviously, we talked earlier in the week. It's easy to figure out 4 of these 5 inactive guys, but who the 5th one will be, and for the last several weeks, that last one of those spots have gone to a cornerback. So whether it be had been Joey Porter, Donte Jackson, Corey Trice Jr. So it's going to be interesting. And look, we'll know later today too, because the team, obviously today's the day that you make any upgrades or downgrades. So maybe we'll have our answer, by 4:00 today, if say Donte Johnson either gets upgraded or downgraded. But it sets up for, assuming Donte Jackson's ready to go, like I said earlier in the week, a lot of people are going to be mad as hell if it ends up being Corey Trice Jr. On the inactive list. I guess the other way you could go to it, we even saw on Hard Knocks a couple of weeks ago, Mike Tomlin talking to Michael Pruitt, said, "Man, I'm glad I addressed you." Even though he, other than Michael Pruitt being injured this year, those have been the only times that he's been inactive. I'm trying to roll around in my head who else could quite possibly, be a healthy scratch for that game, and it's hard to come up with with a short list of players.
Yeah, I mean, other than the standard fare, right? Of let's put Kyle Allen in that bucket. It's not going to be an O lineman, Scotty Miller, Who else will be on
Dean
on that list there?
Lowry.
Dean Lowry. And then who's number 4? That's kind of is there a clear number 4?
Yeah,
Could be number 5 as well?
we had Kyle Allen, we had Dean Lowry, we had Preston Smith.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, they're probably going to scratch Preston Smith again for this game.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. And then that 5th spot really becomes a real wild card. Obviously, if it's Jackson with the back, then there you go. Problem solved. If not, becomes very interesting who that last guy will be. From the Bengals side, from their injury and health standpoint, couple names to watch here. Zach Taylor calling Chase Brown, the starting running back, and Amarius Mims, their starting rookie right tackle, questionable in true game time decisions for Saturday night. Brown with a high ankle sprain suffered last week. Mims has had ankle and hand issues. A couple players did not practice for them on Thursday. Drew Sample is questionable. I think he's going to play, though. Sam Hubbard's going to miss this game with a knee injury. He's an underrated player, so that's a pretty significant loss for them. But Brown and Mims, the 2 real names to watch here, Dave.
Yeah, and the Bengals even signed one of their running backs off of their practice squad to the 53-man roster yesterday. So that's usually not a great sign for when it comes to Chase Brown, and that would be a big loss for them. I know probably league wide Chase Brown's not a well known name, but I think he's filled in very, very well and done a lot of good things for the Bengals this year, especially in the passing game. So if they are without him, Chase Brown even had, I was looking back, had 100 total yards of offense in that first meeting between the Steelers, so this is a guy that obviously well versed in the offense, and he's not who's their backup, Herbert over there.
Yeah, Khalil Herbert, who's barely played this year. Brown has become their workhorse back. He's played 80% of the snaps in 8 straight games, and so they are not used to just playing without him in general. I think he's going to give it all he has to get ready for this one, but we shall see.
Right. So that even him not 100%, for this game, and there's no way to, it's hard to imagine he would be. That would be a tremendous loss for them. And Mims, I was looking back too. He had that hand almost like a cat, I guess, kind of casted. In that last game there, and then I think now they're saying ankle on top of it there, and he obviously plays right tackle, so that's quite a matchup between him and T.J. Watt on Saturday. The Steelers also for this time around will have Alex Highsmith. They didn't have Alex Highsmith for that last meeting against the Bengals, so. Yeah, those are 2 big names, and then like you mentioned with Trey going to miss that game. That's huge as well for them. On top of there, so this is obviously a team that relies heavily on their offense because their defense hasn't been all that great for a good part of the season, and the Steelers obviously had one of their better offensive outputs against this Bengals defense several weeks ago as well too. So it will be interesting come game time, or even maybe even later today, to see if the Bengals downgrade a guy like Chase Brown to out or not.
Yeah, we'll see. I imagine they're going to take that one to the 11th hour and give every opportunity to get him to go in warm-ups on tomorrow night. If Mims cannot play, then Devin Cochran should be the starting right tackle. At least there's a good chance of that. He's going to make his second career start. They could try to do some other O-line shuffling, I think, too, with Cody Ford. We shall see. And Orlando Brown, he's going to play, but he's basically playing on one leg. He's got a broken bone in his leg. And so that's going to be an issue facing Alex Highsmith and Nick Herbig.
Yeah, and remember what the last time to build up that we saw in Hard Knocks of going out and telling Herbig, go after Zeus and all like that, and he ended up and once again, you didn't have Highsmith for that game, so to kind of keep a fresh body in there, so to speak, of Highsmith and Herbig and going on that other side there should definitely help. They have to have a great game out of their edge rushers in this one for sure. They've got to be impactful, especially, and that's going to be hard to do when you got a guy like Joe Burrow that for the most part doesn't hold on to the football very long. I think if you look back at his time to throw throughout the season, especially for a guy that's got the amount of attempts that he has there. He gets the ball out fairly well. And, one thing that hasn't changed that we talked about, ahead of that last game there that really stuck out on film, that the Steelers weren't able to do very well at all is, that Burrow does such a great job of pocket movement, manipulation, stepping up, stepping out, and all. There was obviously the big play of T.J. Watt retracing the arc and then getting the strip sack on him. But you've got to get pressure on this guy from the edge. You got to make him hold on to the football, get him in as many situations as possible, because if you don't, they're going to move the football on you regardless here. So you've got to have these splash plays from your defense, getting Burrow pressured, making, bad decisions or bad throws, or either on the ground.
Which is how Pittsburgh won the previous matchup. They allowed 31 points to the Bengals offense, the other points coming off that pick six, but they created 2 forced fumbles. They recovered, one of which was turned for a touchdown. The other one stalled out a drive a little past midfield. And so those are in the way we talked about how the Lions beat the Niners in that shootout. They won with turnovers, 2 picks of Brock Purdy. Pittsburgh has to win with splash plays of their own. They have not been making in recent weeks, but we'll talk about Steelers Bengals in just a little bit. Dave, let's talk about some more housekeeping, some accolades to go around this week for the Pittsburgh Steelers. 4 players have been selected and voted to the 2025 Pro Bowl taking place in February. That is TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Chris Boswell, and Minkah Fitzpatrick. And so we knew that Hayward and Watt were essential locks. She had a lot of confidence Boswell would make it, and certainly well-deserved. Minkah's going to be the one that raises some eyebrows, understandably, but there is a reputation factor, a fan vote factor. Obviously, he made the Pro Bowl last year when he definitely should not have, when he was hurt and didn't play well. So I understand the idea about him not really being deserving of it this year, but he made it last year. It's not a shock to see him make it this year.
Yeah, another thing that I look back to, and even Minkah said is a bit surprised because he hasn't had the splashiest of plays this year. At least he did have the one interception a couple of weeks ago and got broke that streak of games without a turnover there. But I was looking back. The Steelers, at least according to Sports Info Solutions. I think we might have, because it's so hard with the air yardage. Sometimes what the game book says and what you charted at sometimes might differ by about one game because of throws into the end zone and all like that. But they have it down as the Steelers only allowing 2 touchdowns of 20 air yards or more so far this season.
That's interesting. Trying to think back which ones those were.
I was too, and I pulled them up. One of them was to Rico Dowdle, kind of
against Elliott.
Kind of on an extended play, I guess, if you will.
And the other was Johnston against the Chargers.
No,
Quentin Johnston.
It was against it was Judy, I think.
Oh yeah, against the Browns on that first touchdown in the second game. It would have been, right?
I believe so. I didn't look at the week there, but
was Quentin Johnston not? It must have been real borderline then. I assume it wasn't, obviously, if they're not capturing it like that.
What week was the Chargers game?
Yeah, week 3, a 27-yard touchdown pass from Herbert to Quentin Johnston, left sideline. Maybe they didn't have enough air yards. Maybe it had to have been right under it then.
I can find that out because I've got the play statistics report.
That was that cover 2 hole shot, or Minkah couldn't get over in time, and it was a really good throw by Herbert to put the Chargers up 7-0 early in that game. Again, that must have been just shy of the 20 air yards, probably 17 or something.
They had that 17 air yards.
Okay, there you go. All right, gotcha. Yeah, good call. So, yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh has...
that's just one. That's just one stat of touchdowns, But for the most part, too, this defense hasn't given up a lot of big air play. Air. That's something to look at here real quick. just the overall air yards on 20-yard passes that this team has given up. If you flex for a little bit, show your muscles here a little bit, maybe I can figure that out here.
It's probably on a relatively lower end. It may have ticked up in recent weeks. I know that first one came against Denver off that trick play in week number 2 on that little throwback to Bo Nix, who was aligned wide, and then Corey Trish Jr. picked off the pass 1 or 2 plays later that took points off the board. Yeah, there's certainly an element when we talk about Minkah Fitzpatrick and his play. There's the intangibles, some of the throws the quarterbacks don't make. We've talked about that. I showed one clip of against Aaron Rodgers that Rodgers wanted a seam ball one time, and Minkah was there, and you see Rodgers turn it down and roll out and have to go to some other reader along the sideline. So trying to capture Minkah's impact isn't always about the numbers, and sometimes there's a little too much focus on splash plays in general. But I do think overall, while he's been a really good tackler, and that's always been true and an underrated part of his game, his coverage ability has not been as strong this year as past years, even putting the big plays aside. Some of the man coverage work against tight ends, I think there's been times where he could have been more aggressive on the football. There's a really good example against, I think, either the Jets game or the Colts game, where you could really point to that. So, is he really deserving of a Pro Bowl bid this year? Probably not. I hadn't looked at the other free safeties out there because it's designated by free safety and strong safety on the Pro Bowl list to see who else might be in competition. I mentioned on Twitter, Jesse Bates being out of the AFC in Atlanta now. It probably helps limit the competition. Maybe a Geno Stone potentially could have made a late surge. He's got 3 picks in his last 4 games, but it is what it is. Happy for Minkah, and that's all you can really think about.
All right, I've got the numbers here. The Steelers have given up, according to Sports Info Solutions, 17 completions of 20 air yards or more. That kind of ranks them about right in the middle, a little higher in a little below, I guess, halfway point in there to kind of give that perspective. The Bengals have given up 17 completions, the Chargers 17, the Patriots 17, the Titans have given up the fewest of 12, and the Giants lead the league with 31 completions of 20 air yards or more, and the Ravens, who went through that bad spell, They've obviously corrected a lot of that now. They've given up 27 of them. By no means am I trying to frame this as more to try to build up Minkah Fitzpatrick. I think it is obvious that the splashy plays have not been there. But in the flip side, they're not hitting down the middle of the field or big amounts of air yards overall in the passing game against this team overall. So, you've heard the Mike Tomlin and the coaches say all the time he's doing his job back there, and all for the most part he is. And I think he's had some nice tackles. I think he even said yesterday that he's been mostly guarding the post, which obviously he has there. We just become accustomed to Minkah Fitzpatrick in those first several years of him, 4, 5, 6 takeaways, couple of forced fumbles, and he just has not had those splashy plays.
Sure. Totally understand that point, and that's typically what gets you the accolades. But we know at Pro Bowl, admittedly, there's reputation factor. The fan voting is not the entire component, but it is certainly one component, which I don't think he even finished that high in the fan voting. So it wasn't really the fans that got him to the Pro Bowl. It really must have been the other elements, the coaches and the players, etc. So again, you can gripe about it. I'm not going to lose much sleep over it, but he's there, but Hayward, Watt, and Boswell at the least certainly extremely deserving of their Pro Bowl accolades.
And man, what can you say about the season Cameron Hayward's had? And this should culminate in an All-Pro season for him. It's hard to imagine it not. And if it does culminate in an All-Pro season for him, we went into kind of this year kind of saying, is Cam Hayward borderline Hall of Fame, and all. But I mean, if you add another Pro Bowl, another All-Pro designation, and I mean, what's he going to end up with sacks here for the season?
He's at 88.5 in his career right now, 8 on the season. So if he gets to 90 this game, early next year, it's hard to put that resume out of Canton.
Right. So, I mean, and at his age and all like that, just a tremendous season for him. Boz needs no explanation. Watt, you would have liked to see Watt had a better last couple of games here, but self-explanatory why he's a Pro Bowler.
We do need to really frame Boswell as a historically good season, one of the best kicking seasons ever in NFL history with one game to go. Still has a chance to tie or maybe even break the record for single season field goals. In some ways, you hope he doesn't. Hopefully, you put the ball in the end zone, but he's got 40, only one of four kickers to ever do so. And for Hayward, yeah, for his age, only the fifth Steeler to make the Pro Bowl, age 35 or older, joining Ben, Mike Webster, the great John Henry Johnson, and Ernie Stautner, who did it twice in 1960 and 1961. So a lot of special company there for certainly well-deserved and pleasantly surprised by many the job that Hayward did this year.
Absolutely. And team MVP was announced.
And that went to one TJ Watt. Had some question, maybe he could go to Chris Boswell or somebody else, but no surprise for TJ Watt. He's won it 5 of the last 6 years. First Steeler ever to win MVP 5 times. I think it was him and AB at 4 times. Now Watt, it sits in first place all by his lonesome with the 5-time award. And so obviously the value of TJ Watt, Steeler fans know it. As you said, barely needs an explanation. Another great season, maybe not the gaudy season he's typically used to, but we know he gets chipped at a super, super high rate, and the attention he receives and how that allows others to be free and win one-on-one matchups is really valuable. And again, those are some of the intangibles about his game that don't always immediately still show up on the top line box score.
Yeah, look, you could have made a strong argument for Chris Boswell to win this. Heck, Cam Hayward too. Those were probably the three there. And the last time looking at the list on Steelers.com, the only time I think a kicker has won the most valuable player award was Gary Anderson way back in 1983. So it would have been quite significant had a kicker won the award.
Yeah, that was going to be tough to do. If there was a year for that to change, then this would have been the season. But Boswell should still get his recognition. Otherwise, with the Pro Bowl, we'll see if he gets All-Pro. You only get one slot for first-team All-Pro. He certainly deserves it. He would have my vote. But will he beat out Brandon Aubrey of Dallas, who's having a good season, who was first-team All-Pro last year? Will the voters kind of just lean on name and reputation a little bit? We shall see. No Steelers kicker has ever been voted All-Pro before, Dave. And so Boswell, chance to be the first.
All right. Good for him. That's going to cost the Steelers some money during the offseason.
Well worth every penny of it. Some other Steelers awards in terms of Rookie of the Year. This one, no-brainer, Dave, went to center Zach Frazier. Was not unanimous. I think Ray Fittipaldo said there were 2 votes for Peyton Wilson, including one from Ray himself. But Frazier, I think, the clear favorite and winner there. And then for the media award, the chief award to the best who has the best interactions with the media, as voted by the Pittsburgh chapter, that went to Alex Highsmith. And so Frazier and Highsmith, congrats to them.
Frazier, not a surprise at all. I was a bit surprised that it wasn't unanimous, and no disrespect to Peyton Wilson. I think Peyton Wilson's done a tremendous job, but I'm a bit surprised that it wasn't unanimous among the media there. And plus he finished what did I say on the Pro Bowl fan voting list, like 6th or 7th, and he was like the 3rd most votes for the AFC side at the center position. So I don't know how we haven't seen the complete list of alternates around the NFL, but I would imagine it would take a couple of people bowing out. But I think it was who's the Chiefs center?
Creed Humphrey.
Yeah, Creed Humphrey and Linderbaum, I think, finished ahead of him, at least in fan votes there. If those guys go deeper into the playoffs, what I'm getting at is it probably wouldn't be a huge shock if Frazier ends up in the Pro Bowl games as some sort of alternate replacement.
Yeah, you wouldn't be shocked if a Chiefs or a Ravens made the Super Bowl and they had to turn to somebody else. My understanding was I had read somewhere, and it's a little hard to kind of verify these things, that Pittsburgh did not have any official alternates, but who knows how those things change with so many guys that drop out with injuries, and of course the guys go to the Super Bowl. So we shall see. But if there was one name you kind of wondered, could he make the Pro Bowl? might have guessed Zach Frazier, but like you said, with Humphrey and Linderbaum ahead, it's a tough group to crack.
I don't think the Steelers officially released that alternate list. I think probably some at certain years, some media members maybe get a hold of it through the PR department or whatnot. But I know the league does not make it official. Release official list. I tried to get that last year, and the NFL rep said I got to contact the team about that, and the team ain't going to give me that information.
Yeah, there was one report that said Pittsburgh and Miami, I think maybe Tennessee, did not have any alternates, but I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, those are the four who actually made it, and all those four are starters for the Pro Bowl, which is less of a thing now that the game is not really a game. There's a flag football game, there's the mini games, but it's a legacy award. It helps with resumes. And should the voting change at all, Dave? Because you do see some players who are clear snubs, not just in Pittsburgh, but I think about Kirby Joseph with Detroit, who led the NFC with interceptions with 9 of them. He doesn't get a Pro Bowl vote. Should fans have this kind of control over these things that do matter for contracts and legacies, Hall of Fame, all that?
I mean, the fan, you can't take the fan portion out of it. I do wonder if it's how equal is equal when it comes to the thirds of the coaches and the players. I mean, this obviously is a popularity. I don't know. Should you add maybe I mean, when it comes to all pro, you've got 50 selected, media members and all like that. Sometimes you question if those guys even know what's going on. Should there be some other outside committee involved with this rotating committee? One selection from each NFL city. I don't know. Either way, you're not going to get around the snub talk. Someone's always going. There's always going to be a list of 5 or 6 guys that you can make serious arguments for being snubbed out of the Pro Bowl. But it is highly referenced when it comes to resumes and Pro Football Hall of Fame and all like that.
It is. And so you wonder, should that become a voting component? But even if it wasn't, if it was a committee component, there's still going to be snubs, as you said. So that is probably inescapable. But those are good questions to have come the offseason. All right, Dave, let's go to the coordinator's corner. Arthur Smith, Terrell Austin speaking earlier this week on Wednesday. I don't think either guy, especially Arthur Smith, did not really reveal a whole lot. Super interesting. Did you have any big takeaways from those conversations?
What was kind of walk me through maybe some of the most relevant things. Let's see. Arthur Smith was asked about the interception.
He was. I mean, he basically made a pass that the play wasn't run exactly the way it was supposed to, but I don't know if that was in reference to an incorrect route or just a result of, we weren't trying to throw a pick into triple coverage on that play, whatever the case was. And that storyline's been beaten to death pretty good. It came up again yesterday. Pickens was asked about it himself and just flat out stopped the interview basically and did not answer it. So I think at this point, all that can be said about that play has been said.
Yeah, and I think that was, let's see, when Russ is at the line, if he wants to change a play or not, is that working out to your satisfaction? Are you happy with the way that's going? He says they're all built in. There's no, hey, there's no, hey, you can get to anything. That just doesn't happen in the modern NFL. Maybe a few people here or there, but you build in plays, things are packaged. So certainly a defense can fool you and you don't get into it. Not every play is like that, but just the way that you package things, that really has not been an issue. More of it has been execution, sometimes the details of things. So yeah, just not overall anything earth shattering, not that there really is on a week-to-week basis from Arthur Smith.
And same with Terrell Austin. There wasn't a whole lot there. Austin did say he did not have a personal issue with the guys venting their frustration after the Chiefs game. Says he'd rather these guys care and vent it out than not care and just blow off the mistakes that they're making. Deshaun Elliott did speak with reporters and basically apologized and regretted for his very clear and kind of calling out teammates, not individually, but just as the group after the Chiefs game. Obviously, his harsh language to the way that defense was playing, he said he should have kept that in-house. I imagine that was a message that was sent that day after during that team meeting, but Austin saying he had no issue with guys expressing how they felt.
And look, I don't either. I don't think you go flat out and call out a certain player, and he didn't. But look, we've talked about miscommunication several times late in the season here about this defense, and the big thing now at this point. And Mika talked yesterday, and they always said, we feel like we're going to get it fixed. Well, uh, they haven't in the last couple weeks. Don't tell me about the labor pains. Just show me the baby, man. And this would be a good week to be on your P's and Q's when it comes to communication with this defense and having guys, not being in correct spots and against a good quarterback once again in Joe Burrow as well too. So it seems like they were able to, based on what Tomlin said and what Terrell Austin said and what several of the players, Cam Hayward and Deshaun Elliott, that they've done a good job of putting this stuff behind them, and now it's just time to go out and show that you have been able to fix that kind of stuff and severely limit the amount of times that you're going to have bust or players in the wrong gap or what have you. You got to get this communication right in this game.
They do. I thought Minkah Fitzpatrick had a really telling comment about some of the root of the issues of why Pittsburgh is struggling to communicate, why receivers are seemingly so open. Minkah said yesterday, quote, "I think teams are scheming us. They know that we're having some issues with motions and stacks and bunches and stuff like that. If you look at the stuff that we've been beat on or guys are running open, it's stuff that each team kind of got from the last two." End quote. And I mentioned that in my communication breakdown, some of the motions to 3x1 and some of those kind of switch verticals where, number 3 becomes new number 1, or, it's just some sort of switch release where you have to communicate, okay, this guy's in a different alignment that he was, pre-snap. And Pittsburgh, I think, has struggled to pass it off effectively. It's why you see those two guys taking the same player, because these things are not being communicated well. But Minkah says that they've been really repping that and working that. I think just having actual practice time on the field, which they had little of during that 3-game, 11-day stretch, will be beneficial for them. But as you said, Dave, only thing that matters is proof on the field, and they're going to face one of the best offenses in football this weekend.
Yeah, a lot of what you put in that breakdown came out of Minkah's mouth, right?
Yeah. So I was happy to be able to go through it this past weekend and really have a deep dive into some of the trends that Pittsburgh was being hurt on. But again, as I said, all that matters is fixing it. We can talk about how it looks like it's fixed, and everything looks good in practice. Everything looks good on a whiteboard. Only thing that matters is what happens at Acrisure Stadium tomorrow night.
And you can bet if someone, if we see it on our end, the Bengals definitely see it. And once again, you got a very talented receiver group, a good wide receiver in Gesicki, and obviously a good quarterback in Joe Burrow. So you can bet they're going to try to stress them in the areas that they've shown the weakness in these last several weeks.
One other note from that communication and post-Chiefs game talk, Cam Hayward on his podcast, Not Just Football podcast, said he was not calling out anyone in particular with his comment. I'm paraphrasing slightly here, but saying if 10 guys do their job and one guy doesn't, we're screwed. I know that got a lot of play. A lot of people were thinking that Cam was calling out someone in particular, trying to figure out who that one guy was. Hayward said I was not doing that. I was making a general comment about, it's if one fails, we all fail kind of a thing. And that's all the comment was. If he has an issue with somebody in particular, he'll talk to that person in particular. He won't just blast it to the media, which we talked about. I tweeted about. I knew Cam was not calling out. Like, he's the captain of the team. He's not going to be calling out a guy. That's not stuff the 35-year-old veteran does. And so I understood the commentary there. But again, that one got a lot of buzz before Hayward clarified his comments. And so I want to pass that information along.
What did he say in that team meeting? Didn't I put that quote that came out from Hard Knocks? There's a couple of dirty words in there. Don't assume this crap's, I'm paraphrasing. Don't assume this crap's going to get done, man. Attack practice, attack the weight room, attack the film room. If we're going to get this right, man, it's got to be an effort put towards that crap. Don't just assume the crap's going to change, because that's our problem. We're not being accountable and learning from the crap. We got to get this crap right together. Can you?
Crap is being subbed in for a different 4-letter word there. Just
right.
For clarification. Right. Yeah. I mean, I thought the interesting part there was just about we're not being accountable was the interesting comment that Hayward made. And obviously that was pre-Chiefs game, and so it did not get cleaned up Chiefs game, and they'll have another chance to prove themselves before the playoffs.
You can say crap, right? On a podcast, right? I've said worse.
So anyway, again, bottom line is the bottom line is the bottom line, and that's results on the field.
Yeah, let's see it Saturday night against the Bengals. Let's see a good communicated defense. Let's definitely not see 400 something total yards. Let's see the Bengals run considerably less plays this time, and let's see better. Got to get that red zone percentage down back in check.
Anything else from the media rounds? Any other players? Any other talk this weekend I might be missing? There has been quite a bit since we last spoke on Tuesday, Dave.
Oh, I'm trying to roll through my mind, everybody that's really, spoken and all. And, Russell Wilson just saying you got to have, champion mentality and amnesia. And, I think he's been real good in the leadership factor and keeping a constant message as far as that goes there. Nothing's sticking out. Is anything sticking out to you about what any of these players said?
Not really from the players, but just two other minor threads to pull from this week. Dan Graziano, reporter for ESPN, pretty plugged into things AFC North related, still believes Arthur Smith will get some head coaching interviews this cycle. Even seems to be more confident in that thought now than he was a couple weeks ago. You might think with the team backsliding that would change, but Graziano still believes that Smith will get some looks. Will he get hired? Who the heck knows? Nobody really knows right now. Maybe a couple less job openings available than we initially thought. And our good old friend Landry Jones has become a college coach. He's now going to be an offensive analyst at Tennessee, joining former Oklahoma coach, was that Josh Heupel down there. So kudos to Landry on the beginning of his college football coaching career.
Let's see. Terrell Edmonds ended up on the practice squad of the Chargers on Thursday, and little validation, I think, from you. Kind of, it doesn't mean hardly anything, but Plumlee elevated to the 53-man roster of the Seahawks yesterday as a wide receiver.
Yeah, good for John Rice Plumlee. We'll see if he gets to make his NFL debut against the Rams in Week 18. But he was a guy that it was a fun camp story, easy guy to root for. He wherever he had, he played a little bit of receiver in Pittsburgh, but obviously primarily quarterback. And he wanted to be a quarterback, but my scouting report was he should make the switch to receiver. He was a one-time receiver in college for a season at Ole Miss. And so kudos to him. He's bounced around, was in Jacksonville, now in Seattle. Hopefully he can catch his first pass this weekend.
You would assume that he's got a good chance of being dressing for a game, wouldn't you?
If he's being elevated, you would think so. Although I checked, I don't think they have any major injuries there, but I am not Seahawks Depot, so I don't know if they're resting guys, or I don't even know their situation playoff wise. So we shall see.
And I guess the only other thing there is going to be a lot of former Steeler quarterbacks getting reps around the NFL this week. Even Joshua Dobbs expects to start for the 49ers. I don't think the Eagles are going to play Pickett with the busted up ribs, so there won't be that aspect. I think Mason Rudolph and Levis are going to kind of, however that's going to look, alternate. Are
they going to split? Oh, they really? They're splitting snaps.
I think that's kind of, and I haven't been paying close attention, but that's kind of the takeaway that I get there. Who else? Trubisky.
Mitch Trubisky. There's one more.
Oladokin.
Yes, Chris Oladokin. Carson Wentz will start in Kansas City, but the reporting was that Oladokin should play. I don't know if that's been confirmed by Andy Reid, but I'm rooting for Oladokin to make his NFL debut.
All right. So, and then obviously this last weekend we had quite a few former Steeler quarterbacks either pass or run for a touchdown there. Just trivial, stuff not worth spending a lot of time on, but it was just some of the stuff that we kind of watch out of the rear view mirror sometimes.
It amuses us. You mentioned Josh Dobbs too, right? Out there in San Francisco. Yeah, so get to start for Brock Purdy, and the Browns are starting Bailey Zappi, and so the odds of a Browns upset are looking, anything can happen, but anything will have to happen for the Browns to upset the Ravens.
I don't know. I'll tell you this. I'd rather have Zappi start than DTR, but DTR has been miserable in his snaps there, and Zappe obviously has several games experience and all like that. So even so, we expect the Ravens to take them to the woodshed pretty good.
Somebody on Twitter made the comment that Pittsburgh lost to both DTR and Bailey Zappi last year, and it made me very sad. So we'll see. Well, hopefully the Ravens can get caught as well. All right, Dave, let's preview this game ourselves for Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. Week 18, our favorite, the night game, 8 p.m. Eastern time in Acrisure Stadium. Pittsburgh will know their AFC North fate, essentially, going into this game with the Ravens and Browns playing ahead of this one at the 4:30 slot. If Baltimore wins, Pittsburgh cannot win the North, and they'll play for either the 5 or the 6 seed to go to Houston or to Baltimore come wild card weekend. So if Pittsburgh wins, they're the 5 seed. If they lose and the Chargers win, then they will be the 6 seed again, assuming that Baltimore beats Cleveland in that late afternoon slot. Rematch of this crazy 44-38 game. Let's start with this Bengals offense, Dave, still firing on all cylinders with Burrow, the weapons at receiver, at tight end. What are your thoughts when you rewatch this Bengals offense?
Boy, they're good. And kind of knew that throughout the season anyway. Their defense has been the side of the football that's obviously let them down. They're able to move the football. It goes back to starts at the quarterback position, and we said this before the first meeting between these two teams, and how effective Joe Burrow is, playing really his best football of his career this season. You've got to find ways to get him in longer yardage situations, make him hold on to the football as long as possible. You want him, he's going to make plays, but I would much rather force Joe Burrow backwards and out of the pocket that way, as opposed to him being able to step in and more in platform type situation where maybe his original routes remain kind of open to him. We saw, especially on that touchdown pass in the low red zone last year, you even had all those bodies around him as he's stepping up, and he still managed to get the football away in the end zone for a touchdown there. So you've got to find a way to pressure him more consistently. You can't allow him to step up into the pocket and extend plays that way. You got to be very cognizant of the depth of your rushes, first and foremost, because he's got such a good feel of depth of the rush around him and being able to step up. You got to get that. You got to have guys like Keanu Benton pushing up the middle and really constricting this thing on him. Once again, he's going to make plays, but I'd much rather see him backing out from the pocket out to the outside that way, as opposed to him stepping up in the pocket and kind of staying a little bit more in rhythm of the play. I think we've got to be talking about 3, 4, 5 sacks on him. But even so, and I think we even said this the other day, getting 4 or 5 sacks on Joe Burrow isn't necessarily a predictor to winning the football game. You got to get the strip out of them, or you got to force them into throws. If you're at the line of scrimmage, got to get the hands up as usual. I think they had the one pick last year, right, because of the ball going up, or earlier in the season, the ball going up in the air. You got to take advantage of any mistakes that Joe Burrow might have, and it all starts with limiting him in the pocket and that pocket movement overall. I think, and this is a guy too that's not afraid to use his legs on top of it. So it's easy for us to sit here and say what the Steelers must do when controlling Burrow, as opposed to going out there and do it. But it's got to be a significant part of the conversation, I think. If we're talking about a Steelers win on Monday, about how they were able to control his movement and ability within the pocket there. I think we're going to have to talk about not only 4 or 5 sacks in this game, but getting the football away from him, albeit a strip, albeit a tip ball, albeit a mistimed pass, or somewhere where he forced the football. And then once again with this offense, I mean, we've talked about it, ad nauseum there. They're going to move the football. They're going to get down in the red zone, but you've got to come up 1 of 3, 1 of 4, 1 of 5 within the red zone. You can't let this offense put up the points, especially in the low red zone area. So it starts with him.
Well said by you. In point taken on sacking him does not equate to beating him. He was sacked 7 times in overtime against Denver in that game last weekend, and they still won. He is 3-1 this season in games in which he's been sacked at least 4 times. That one loss, though, did come to Pittsburgh. I was pulling up our numbers and our charting on this. Dave, want to get your take. Pittsburgh only sent 5 or more rushers about 20% of the time in week 13, 8 of 41 dropbacks. Do you treat him more like a Lamar or Jaden Daniels where you want to rush him to contain him? I know he's obviously not the running threat and not as elusive as those guys, but he is squirrely. He is as slippery as you said, as Mike Tomlin said in that Hard Knocks. Do you rush more, but you do sacrifice a chance to play coverages and rotate your coverages to the back end if you're sending 5 guys more consistently? Is that the right approach, or do you try to do your standard 4-man rush, drop 7, and just tell your rush to be smarter and contain?
Yeah, slippery slope there. I think you got to safe rush this guy. If you tip anything, he's so good at picking up the blitz in other words, I don't think you're going to confuse this guy. So I think you got to kind of rush him. Pick your spots where you truly want to force the football out, maybe quick, in second and long and third, maybe extremely long type situations there, because once again, I'm more content. I want to push the pocket and collapse it on him as often as I can. And it goes back to, once again, though, he's, for a guy that's got the amount of attempts that he has this season, he gets the ball out fairly quick, So, if he starts getting the sense that you're going to start sending more numbers to get him, they're just going to play that short horizontal game that they've seen other teams have the success against. Now, I do think not having Chase Brown would be a huge part of that there, but I mean they've got one of the most talented wide receiver groups in the league. They've got a great tight end in Gesicki. So I think you just better be smart with your rush plan here, and I think you just gotta. I'd like to see the interior push be better within controlling the escape lanes on him, because once again, he's not afraid to take off with the football. You just got to have a smart rush plan against him, and then the opportunities that you do get Joe Burrow to hold on to football, you've got to get to him. You've just got to get to him.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It'll be interesting to see Pittsburgh's approach. Again, there's always pros and cons and trade-offs. If you want to rush to contain and bring extra people, you're limiting coverages, you're having fewer people to cover in general, but it may be worth it in certain situations. One thing I'll be watching for. You're right. Even if they don't have Chase Brown, that's going to be a big loss, no question, but they were a pass-first team. They came out throwing on first down against Pittsburgh in that Week 13 matchup on first down in quarters 1 through 3. They threw the ball 20 times, only ran it 9. And so that is their personality. Joe Burrow leads the NFL in passing attempts. And so they can handle not having their starting running back probably better than most teams who are going to lean on him more. How do you deal with Chase and Higgins? Is there certain ways to do it? Of course, Troy Porter Jr. last meeting, that was that 6 penalty performance. He was on Higgins quite a bit. Mike Tomlin said he kind of was falling on him because he wanted Porter to be physical, fight fire with fire. Where do you begin sorting all that out?
Well, first and foremost, going back to the backs once again, as I mentioned, Chase Brown had, 37. He had 100 total yards from scrimmage in that first meeting on 15 total touches of the football. When you add in Herbert's 14 yards, rushing, you had 114 total yards on 14 total touches between those two. You've got to cut that number in half from the running backs this time.
Yeah. Now Brown hit that one big run for 40, and then they did bottle him up the rest of the game. But of course, he did hit that big run that turned into a touchdown.
Sure. But I mean, and if you take that out, you get to where you need to be about cutting that number in half. So you got to take the running backs out of the game, both on the ground and in the passing game. And then obviously it comes up to those two wide receivers in Gesicki there. You got to play the physical game. Obviously with Higgins, it sounds like Porter's going to be on him quite a bit in this one. I mean, it's easier said than done. I mean, and Burrow seen Burrow talk about, through this Hard Knocks and all like that, even if they tried to, there are still instances where he knows he's got to try to get the ball to Jamar Chase. So the biggest thing here is just tackling the catch. I mean, those guys are going to catch their footballs. You can't let anything have instances where those guys are having the explosive plays. I think Chase had a 49-yard catch, which was almost half of his yardage in that first meeting. So overall, they did an okay job, I guess, except, he did have the touchdown in the end zone there. And Higgins, half of his yards came on one play as well, too. So if you eliminate those, and one of these guys is bound to have an explosive play or 20 yards or more. But if we're looking at, and I'm not just box score hunting here when it comes to those guys, because both those guys are extremely dangerous and both of those guys are going to get catches in this ball game here. But we have to be looking at this okay, Chase had 6 catches for 60 yards and his long was 22 yards. And Higgins, kind of the same thing, 5 or 6 catches, 60 yards, but long was, 20 yards along those lines. You've got to limit the explosive plays. You got to tackle the catch on these guys because they're going to complete passes to them. You've just got to make this team put together the 9, 10, 12 play drives on offense.
And get those red zone stops. To me, as you mentioned earlier, Dave, that is the biggest key. The Bengals 4 or 5 in the red zone in week 13. You got to cut that number down to be under 50% because you said they're going to move the football. They're too potent. They're going to make their plays. Can you get those stops? Hold them to 3 instead of 7. That's going to be probably the difference in this game. Pittsburgh, I thought, didn't do a bad job and generally does a good job taking away or minimizing, I should say, the Stars. Chase did not have a giant game in that week 13 matchup. Had a touchdown, had a big catch late when the game was close to being over. Other than that, not to totally wipe those plays away, but he didn't go off the way that he's gone off in some games this season or the way that T. Higgins went off against Denver with 3 touchdowns. But the 6 penalties create some hidden yardage there, too, that don't get reflected in their stat sheet, but they were positive plays, so a lot to balance there. I think with the Bengals run game, just go to that briefly, they do a nice job of working at a pistol. Sometimes they'll align in pistol, then move the back sidecar very late to try to hide the direction of the run. They were better on duo runs, split zone runs, kind of more the interior runs. And so that was kind of where they had some of their success. Pass game, a lot of crossing routes, and again, just success down low in the red zone. So that's going to be, to me, really the real determinative factor in this one is how Pittsburgh succeeds or fails inside the 20.
Yeah, and look, I mean, once again, if the Bengals go 4 or 5 in the red zone, 80% in this game, you better hope for another shootout like we had in that first game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, otherwise Pittsburgh will be losing their 4th straight game. So that's really all there is to me. It's not anything mystical, magical, really no different. Create some splash plays, steal a possession, win in the red zone. That's basically what Pittsburgh has to do defensively in this one. Anything else to add, Dave?
No. I mean, they you got to put them in more third down opportunities. They only had 8 in that first meeting there. So obviously they were doing a good job on first and second down when it comes to that. I really think them not having, Chase Brown for this game, not that they lean on the running game heavily, but maybe it allows you to be a little laxer with things when it comes to the running backs overall. Maybe you can focus a little bit more on coverage. The more that the Bengals attempt to run the football in this game, as long as it's not in the fourth quarter with the lead, probably the better for the Steelers overall. I think you've got to make Joe Burrow beat you. 50 dropbacks, and you got to make them put together the 12, 11, 12, 13 play drives. And look, I mean, once again, they sacked them, a handful of times in that first game. You got to get the ball. You got to have Joe Burrow turning the football over in one way or another, probably twice in this game.
which he did in the last game,
Right.
where those sacks became strip sack fumbles, one of which was returned for a touchdown. And yeah, the Bengals tackles, and I don't want to assume, because we've assumed before against weaker looking tackles and lines that have questions, that Pittsburgh's pass rush would eat, and they haven't. And so TJ Watt, he's been a little bit quieter lately. I get all the attention he receives, but he's got to be like dominant TJ Watt in this game. He's always had success against Burrow and the Bengals. I know he's going to get chipped, he's going to get attention, etc. But he's got to be, like he was that first matchup, making those splash plays in big moments, especially if Amarius Mims does not play, and then Highsmith and Herbig on the other side against Orlando Brown have to continue that success. The stars have to be stars in these big moments, and everyone's got to play complementary football, 11-man job, but the stars have to be stars. They've not been at that level, I think, over this 3-game losing streak.
The good thing is, it's been how many days now since the Kansas City game, and you saw Watt talk about that ankle and Hard Knocks and all, and obviously he's had a little bit of time to get that thing better there. You hope that pays off. This is very well could be a game where you see, and it probably needs to be one of those games where TJ Watt has 2.5, 3 sacks, a strip fumble, a couple of bat downs, a couple of TFLs. I mean, this would certainly be the game for TJ Watt to have the game of the season for himself.
Definitely. And that thumb injury, he talked about, or JJ talked about that thumb issue being more of a problem than the ankle. We saw in Hard Knocks, he's got a wrap on whenever he works out with that thumb. I don't know exactly what is wrong with a thumb, but there's something going on there. I think it's his right hand too. And so that becomes pretty important when he tries to, because he's such obviously hand use dependent on beating blocks. So we'll see. Needs a big game. No question about that. All right, Dave. By
the way, I doubt TJ Watt goes to the Pro Bowl games, because isn't his wife set to have their first baby?
It's true.
Coming up here pretty soon, and with the injuries, and who knows if he might need to get something fixed right after the season and all like that. So, and it's in Orlando. It's not in Las Vegas either. So, I do kind of wonder if TJ Watt will ultimately bow out of the Pro Bowl or Pro Bowl games again.
Sorry, honey, I'm going to go play dodgeball in Orlando. Hopefully the kid works out. Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. So fair point by you on that. All right, Dave, flipping over to the offensive side of the football, and something else we need to watch for, Dave. We're not talking about this. Justin Fields, if he plays about 280 snaps in this game, he'll hit that 51% mark for that 6th-round conditional pick. And so we'll be on Justin Fields watching this one. Now that'll be still stay that 6th-round pick. But looking at the Steelers offense, Dave, Fields will play. Maybe there'll be a package for him. It'll be nice to kind of get that element potentially back for this Pittsburgh Steelers run game. But Russell Wilson, of course, starting. What does the Steelers have to do against a Bengals defense that has gotten a whole lot tougher? Their last 4 games since playing Pittsburgh, Dave, they're allowing 19.2 points per game. That is 10th in the NFL. And so this is not the same woe is me Bengals defense it was in this first matchup.
Yeah, but still pretty much the same off the ball linebacker group. And if you look at the cornerback situation this team has right now, is Cam Taylor-Britt's questionable, isn't he?
That's a good point. He came up with an injury yesterday. I think it's a foot, and his status seems to be unclear.
And then Josh Newton on the other side there. And remember back to this first game there, they were so concerned about the second level stuff that they had those linebackers for the greater part of the first half or whatnot playing way back. And the Steelers that ended up with Russell Wilson, a lot of check downs, got a lot of usage of the backs out of the backfield, and then on top of it, the Bengals were absolutely atrocious, I think, in tackling in that game. They haven't been a very good tackling team all season here. So, depending on how they want to play those linebackers this time, I think they try to make some corrections later on in that game against the Steelers, and that's when you kind of saw a little bit more of the vertical stuff opening up. They have had their problems in the past guarding against Pat Freiermuth. So, and look, George Pickens ought to have plenty of opportunities in this game. If they once again decide that they want to, give a lot of attention, two deep safeties in this, and then kind of play more deeper to just try not to give up the explosive play, then you've got to be cognizant of using Pat Freiermuth and your 2 backs up underneath in the passing game there. There's no reason why you should not be able try to at least run early against this defensive unit as well, too, specifically the off the ball linebacker group. So I expect that to be part of it. You got to attack these corners, and we'll see if Cam Taylor-Britt even plays in this one. But Josh Newton, both these guys are primed to be picked on in the right situations, especially in man situations against the Steelers there. And you just got to be smart with the football with Russell Wilson here. So there's no reason to think that the Steelers shouldn't be able to move the football on this defense again. And then once you get into the red zone, you got to bury this thing.
If I'm Arthur Smith with my opening script, provided nothing crazy happens where I'm super backed up or something just insane occurs on the opening kickoff, I'm coming out in 13 personnel in the very first play of this game. I want to see, do the Bengals still come out in their 5 down front? In that first matchup, every time Pittsburgh came out in 13 personnel, 3 tight ends, heavy run look, the Bengals on 1st and 10, play and 10 would come out in their 5 down look with 5 defensive linemen. And Pittsburgh did a great job of not running into that front. They would either check out of it or had a play call designed to run play action, to run screens, to throw the football. I think it was 7 times the Bengals were in that 5 down front. Pittsburgh threw on them 6 times. The one run was a goal line run that did not work, but the 6 passes were successful. So will the Bengals stay in that personality? If they do, then I'm doing the same thing. I'm throwing on that 5 down front. They come out in the 4 down front. I'm going to run the football out of my 13 personnel. So I want to see, what is that chess match? You're right. They ran a lot of cover 2 in that first matchup against 2x2. It was all cover 2. Linebackers getting a ton of depth, allowed checkdowns to the running backs. That's why the running backs caught, 14 passes in that game, Najee and Warren and Patterson. And so we'll see if that continues. Frymouth has always had success against the Bengals. Like you said, Logan Wilson's out. It's got Pratt, Davis Gaither. Those guys are playing more. We'll see if Frymouth can continue that success, but I really want to see that 13 personnel, how the Bengals respond and kind of play that chess match from there.
All right. And something they should have done in a later game after that against the 5 down that they didn't do. So
the Eagles.
Right. So look, the Bengals might come in and say, we would much rather the backs get the ball out of the backfield. We just need to do a better job of tackling. Well, you got to make them prove that if that's the way that they want to try to attack this thing early in the game. But all that said, I mean, that we have yet to really see this offense, get started early here. So it would be so nice for us to finally get that crossed off the list of opening drive touchdown for this offense. And if not that, we've just got to see more points early in this game. And you depending on obviously what that Bengals offense does, you might need them. I would have never guessed we got the shootout that we got last time. And it feels kind of not likely that you're going to see a repeat of that. But if obviously if you're not unable to stop the Bengals offense early in this game, you might have to. But I would like to see more of what they did offensively, especially in that shorter passing game, like you said, on early downs against those heavier fronts.
Yeah, you don't know if you'll get a shootout, but you better be prepared for it if it does turn that way. And Pittsburgh will have to match points with points and can't dig themselves a hole. It was 14-7 Cincinnati in the first quarter of the last game, but Pittsburgh scored in the first play of the second quarter, so it really was 14-14. And so Pittsburgh, they scored, 27 points at half, which they hadn't done in 6 years or so. And so Pittsburgh has to be able to do that. But, I think it also comes down to basic things like take care of the football. You know who leads the NFL in takeaways since that Steelers-Bengals matchup in Week 13, Dave?
I'm guessing the Bengals, huh?
With 12 of them, yeah. Now 6 of them came against Tennessee, and maybe that's Tennessee, but still they forced turnovers in every game since. And so they have become a much better defense. I know that, yes, they have personnel issues, especially in the secondary and a linebacker, and who's their pass rush source outside of Trey Hendrickson. I'm not really sure, frankly, what's changed. If they've just kind of gotten better schematically, they have a good DC and Lou Anarumo, but whatever's changed is working for them. They seem to be a better unit, and Pittsburgh cannot assume they can just move up and down the field at will like that first matchup. But Pittsburgh, has to get back playing their game, which is taking care of the football. They have not done a good enough job of that, obviously, with a 3-game losing streak, and the Bengals have been extremely opportunistic.
Got to make them show that they can tackle.
Yeah, now you're talking kind of more run game, short game to kind of highlight that.
Yeah, just those bigger guys. They had problems tackling Najee, problems tackling Warren, problems tackling Frymouth, if memory serves me.
Yeah, for sure. And Pittsburgh should be well rested and really healthy, completely offensively, right? So,
Yep.
do you see more Justin Fields? Do you see a Justin Fields package with all this layoff and Fields healthy and some good quality practice time? You might.
I certainly would give them something to think about early in this game when it comes to Justin Fields.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, Dave, any other final thoughts here when it comes to previewing the Bengals?
No, it would be nice to see some special teams splash. Obviously, not give up some of those longer. Not have to have Chris Boswell try to trip somebody on the sideline. Wasn't that the Bengals game? I'm losing track here,
The
but
Browns game. It was the Browns game.
okay, the Browns game. Yeah, it would be nice to see some splash in this one.
Just one other quick name to mention, going off the turnover theme of the Bengals defense. I said this earlier in the show, but Geno Stone, who was their big free agent acquisition, who had a bunch of picks last year for the Ravens, he's got an interception in 3 of his last 4 games, 1.3 straight before the Denver game. And so watch out for the relatively local native. He's a little north in Pittsburgh. I think where's he from? Like Newcastle or something, Geno Stone. And so he's been pretty red hot for them. And so just got to know where he's at. The Bengals will do some coverage rotation. Remember, they throw a lot of looks at you. Their defense is known for not just playing one coverage. They're going to throw a lot of different things at you. I don't know if they did a great job with that first matchup, maybe because of some of the injuries. I think that was Josh Newton's first start. And so maybe this defense has at least become a little more settled, a little more experienced. It allows them to spin that dial more than that week 13 game.
All right, this should be an entertaining one for sure.
All right, Dave, we are making our picks, I think, for the final time this regular season for week number 18. Where has the time gone? We'll, of course, get to our Steelers and Bengals picks here in just one moment, but let's make our picks for the rest of week number 18.
All right. Don't know which way you're going on this one. Cleveland Browns at the Baltimore Ravens. According to DraftKings, the Ravens are 20-point home favorites against the Browns right now. The question is, do you think the Browns will cover that?
Is that the biggest line of the entire year? It's got to be, I think, 20 points.
You don't see many at 20.
I know. I mean, I think they cover just because the Ravens at some point almost sit their guys by the fourth quarter. So I'll say the Browns cover, and I'll root for a miracle of a victory.
All right, because you've got such a lead on me, I'm going to have to go against you on several of these games here. Just for try because of trying to make this competitive. I'll take the Ravens lay the 20. I can't believe I'm saying that about an NFL game. I think in real life I wouldn't. I'm not doing that. I'll probably take to counterbalance that in real life. I'll take the plus 20. But as far as you're concerned, I'm laying 20. Saints on the road against the Buccaneers. Buccaneers laying 14 at home against the Saints. Got to hand it to what the Buccaneers have been able to do this year.
Yeah, kudos to them. I mean, they've been in this thing, and the job that Baker's done, and they'll probably try to get Mike Evans 1,000 yards and Bucky Irving. I like Bucky Irving coming out of Oregon, one of my guys. So happy he's having success. Big line, but I will take Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I'll take Buccaneers late of 14. I should go against you there, but I'm not. Giants on the road against the Eagles. I don't think a lot of the big names are going to play in this for the Eagles. That's why this line is still them favored by 3 points against the Giants at home.
Yeah, again, you can't rest everybody, but no Barkley, no Hurts. Obviously, I'm sure some of the other key defensive guys won't go. Drew Lock played pretty well. I'll take the Giants.
I'll take the Eagles later 3 points at home to close out the season there against for the regular season Giants last game. Bears on the road against the Packers. Packers laying 10 points at home against the Bears.
I'll take the Bears to cover. No Jair Alexander. I'll take Chicago.
I'll take the Packers later 10 points. The Bills on the road against the Patriots. The Bills going to be resting some people. The Bills are 2.5-point road favorites against the Patriots.
Yeah, I'll take the Pats.
I'll take the Bills laying the 2.5 points there. Panthers on the road against the Falcons. Falcons laying 8 points at home against the Panthers.
I'll take the Panthers.
I'll take the Falcons lay the 8. Washington on the road against the Cowboys. Washington laying 6 points on the road.
Give me Washington.
I'll take Dallas plus. I think Washington wins, but I think Dallas can cover this. Give me the 6 points. Houston on the road against the Titans. Texans obviously locked into a playoff seeding spot there. Titans are favored by 1.5 points.
Oh, it's a closer line than I thought it would be. I don't know if the Texans are expected to rest starters. I was going to take the Titans if the line was bigger, but I will take Houston, Dave.
I'll take the Titans, laid 1.5 points at home to close out their season. Jaguars on the road against the Colts. A lot of rumblings coming out about their quarterback Richardson and back and all like that. The Colts are 4.5 point. This is a meaningless game for both teams except for draft position, obviously. Colts laying 4.5 at home against the Jaguars.
I think the Jags have shown some fight, and the Colts just seem like probably need to hit a hard reset button on that one, just not working out. I'll take the Jags, Dave.
I'll take the Colts laid 4.5. I'm on the opposite side of the fence on numerous of these for you this week. Chiefs on the road against the Broncos. Chiefs are got the number 1 seed locked up, resting a lot of people. The Broncos are 10.5 point favorites at home in a game they must win.
And they will by at least that margin. Give me Denver, Dave.
Yeah, hard to go against you on this. I'll lay the 10.5 with you on that. Chargers on the road against the Raiders. The Chargers are 4.5 point road favorites against the Raiders.
Raiders keep playing hard. Kudos to them, but I'll go Chargers.
I'll go Raiders in make this a field goal game. So give me the plus 4.5 points for the Raiders there. Dolphins on the road against the Jets. Dolphins laying 1 point at home. Is this Aaron Rodgers' last game?
Gonna ask you the same thing. You're one step ahead of me. I think he comes back. I think he likes a bit of the drama. I don't think he wants to go out quite like this miserable season where he'll play next year. Who knows? I get to hear about I want him to retire just so Mike Florio could not write 12 articles about him coming to Pittsburgh like he's already doing right now. I don't know, Dave. I will take the Jets.
I'll take the Dolphins, lay the point on the road against the Jets. Seahawks on the road against the Rams. Seahawks laying 6.5 on the road against the Rams.
Take the Rams.
What does this mean? The Rams playing?
I have no idea the implications. The NFC feels like this far away land for me. I really have no idea. I just know the Lions and Vikings are playing for the 1 seed essentially.
I smell a rat here, so I'll take the Seahawks lay to 6.5 points against the Rams here. 49ers on the road against the Cardinals. The Cardinals are laying 4.5 points at home against Joshua Dobbs.
Take the Niners.
I'll take the Cardinals late to 4.5. What a really good game here. Minnesota Vikings and Lions to end the season here. The Lions are 2.5 point home favorites against the Vikings.
Yeah, final game of the regular season. To me, the defense for Minnesota just stronger. I will take Minnesota.
I'll take the Lions to get it done in the finale here. I'll lay the 2.5. That takes us all the way back to the Steelers versus the Bengals. Steelers at home. Bengals road favorites, 2.5 points.
I really don't have a good feeling either way this one day. My predictions this year have been miserable. I think my worst year ever picking Steelers games. I was watching on New Year's Day the Oregon-Ohio State game. I picked Oregon to win that game in my head. Clearly was wrong about that. Hard to beat a team twice in some ways. You know, Pittsburgh did sweep the Bengals last year, but they didn't have to face Joe Burrow last year. I'm taking the Bengals in this one, Dave, and hoping to get some reverse jinx Alex magic working here where I pick the Bengals and the Steelers win. Got the Bengals winning this one 24-20, just with the offense is firing the way they're firing. They're a hot team in football. Pittsburgh's goal. The Bengals defense has improved. Again, hard to beat a team twice. That's why I'm taking the Bengals by 4.
All right. This is a perfect time to throw out. The Steelers are facing a 4-game losing streak to end the season. I think you did some research here, right? The last time the last time the Steelers closed out a regular season with 4 consecutive losses. What did I say that was?
98.
Was it 98?
They had a 5-game losing streak then that year.
Okay. When is the last time a team in the NFL with 10 or more wins lost their final 4?
This is a patent stat of the weird. I'll be writing about this if it does happen, because it's actually going to be a little interesting tie-in if it does. But as far as I can tell, the 1986 Jets, last team to lose at least their last 4 and still win 10 games in the season. I think the Jets lost the final 5, but there's some. I'm going to tease it. There's some other interesting things that if it does happen, where Pittsburgh loses this game, they can point to the 86 Jets for some hope, which we'll talk about if that happens come next week.
Okay. So it's up to me now.
It
Look,
is.
this has got to be a get right game. This team, as Mike
Been
Thomas
saying
says,
that for a couple
I
weeks now,
know,
Dave.
I know. I mean, you got to get that stench off of them here. They can play with the Bengals. They should be able to move the football about against them. The question is can they control Joe Burrow and company here? I think the whole Chase Brown thing is significant. I'm interested to see what's the weather supposed to be. Just cold, no snow, or what?
Yeah, I think snow's going to kind of dance in between. Let's check. Maybe some flurries. Just looking here briefly by kickoff. Snow showers, low chance of snow, a little bit of wind. It's just going to be a pretty cold game, low 20s.
All right, I shouldn't have this much confidence in them, but I losing 4 straight and going into the playoffs like that. All the questions and another thing. We talk ahead of the season. This team needed to be 4-2 to even though they're going to be in the playoffs regardless. You got to feel good about it. You got to get it done within the division. You got to go 4-2 in the division. If they don't win this game, they'd be 3-3 in the division at that point. This one's at home, obviously. I think they find a way to get this thing done. I think they get the football away from Joe Burrow and company a couple of times. I think they hold them modestly to 2 points in this one. The number that keeps coming up in my head is 26-23. So I have the Steelers. This might even go down late with a late field goal by Chris Boswell here. I have the Steelers winning this 26-23. So one of us will be right. One of us will be wrong here. They need to win this game. They need to get on the right track. Head of the playoffs. Obviously, if they win this game, they get to go to Houston as well, too. That's something else to really play for within this. Obviously, if they lose and the other things go the wrong way, they got to go on the road against Baltimore. Give me the Steelers to pull out a Week 18 win at home.
So 26 points for Pittsburgh. Could that be a potential NFL record tying field goal for Chris Boswell? You'd need 4 to do it.
All right, I like it.
That could happen to tie David Akers' record. I'm all for it. I don't care how you win this game, Dave. I don't care if it's 6-3. I don't care if it's 44-38 again. Just win, baby, as Al Davis would say.
Yeah, and they need to get on the right track here. I think they do it.
All right, I hope so. Would you rest any consideration at all to resting starters if Baltimore beats the pants off of Cleveland like we all expect?
No, I mean, unless you get late in this game and you're doing the blowing out or you're getting blown out.
All right, let's hope that scenario plays out only in the positive way for Pittsburgh. All right, Dave, let's get through some reader emails to close out today's show.
All right. Nathan writes in, best and worst case this year is we win the Super Bowl and Pickens is awesome, or we lose in round 1 and Pickens is awesome, he says. But what sane person would pay him $30 million per year when he is so unstable at $1 million per year? We should all remember AB's descent into ridiculousness, and he had one of his best 6-year runs in NFL history. It isn't even all about the press stuff either. I can't even remember a receiver not running hard routes on passing plays. Wouldn't it make sense to trade him for a second or possibly third? Let someone else commit to that money, sign a T. Higgins to that salary slot, and draft a wide receiver while hoping Roman Wilson's going to be a viable year 2 option. I feel like paying Pickens is signing up for years of unstable wide receiver behavior, and we have seen that can end poorly. Nathan, we just, we talked recently about this. I think a little bit on the live stream, and I think even in one of the most recent podcasts here. Once again, people are going to get tired of the Pickens post, starting at the end of the season on in, because this is going to be a story because him entering his final year of his contract, him undoubtedly wanting a big deal. How do you approach it? How much, will he skip off-season stuff? Guaranteed money, yada, yada. I, once again, will, and I want to be clear on this. I think he's an extremely talented guy on the football field, but you have to be careful when paying a guy with his attitude, with, just his he needs to grow up quite a bit, and he needs to grow up quite a bit in a hurry, here. And I worry about that overall. And will the, you get into that $28-30 million range there, and even though the Steelers, I have a hard time imagining the Steelers fully guaranteeing him money past the first year. I wonder how that will sit with the Pickens camp. And I've thrown out there that, if you can't get this solved right off the bat during the offseason here, or you think this might be a potential problem, I do think this team needs to entertain phone calls for trading him. I really believe that, because this is a player that's talented, but the stuff, outside and sometimes in between the white lines needs to be examined here. And I understand where Nathan's coming from for sure. I really think you got to be careful here. And I could indeed see this going the route of them entertaining trade offers for him.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time. Traded away AB, which granted was more of AB one thing out, but okay, still a trade. Traded Martavis, traded Claypool, traded Donte Jackson. A lot of receivers end in trades is the pattern here. I don't know how it's going to go. It's a really interesting question. It's going to be one of the questions of the summer. I don't think it's going to be the start of the off season. These things will pick up more throughout the year. The start of the offseason question will be about quarterback. And, you got to find some other receivers no matter what happens to Pickens. You keep them, you trade them, whatever the case is. And also, frankly, maybe if you add some more receivers, Pickens feels a little less he can do whatever he wants, because he kind of has the team by as Dave would say, the short and curlies, where they kind of just have to bend to his will because they have no other options at receiver. He's got a lot of influence and power and can kind of do whatever he wants without a whole lot of consequence right now. So maybe that would change the mindset a little bit. I don't know. We're going to have a whole offseason, like I said, to discuss that. So I've not really tuned my brain into thinking about that a whole lot, other than to note that it's going to be the story we're talking about every single week. And I would expect him to, hold out and not attend spring workouts. Maybe not officially hold out, but not participate in training camp at the start of camp if no deal is done. And I expect this to become one of those media stories that gets batted around endlessly come the spring and summer.
Look, he's under contract for this 2025 season. Now, he'll get a small bump in proven performance escalator here during the offseason, but it's not going to be anywhere close to what he thinks he deserves to own. And nothing says you have to give him a deal this offseason, because he is under contract for 2025. But man, this thing could get ugly throughout the offseason and on into next season if you don't pay him. So everybody listening, be prepared for us to have a lot of more conversations about George Pickens. I understand the concern about paying him that kind of top of the market value. If you do, you got to be careful with the guaranteed money. I will say that.
Yeah, but just to save in his defense, he's an immensely talented receiver, which I know we all acknowledge, and Pittsburgh would be a much worse offense without him. And if he could just mature a couple of clicks up, not even become like this perfect Larry Fitzgerald poster boy, but just a little less immature, a little less volatile and explosive, then man, you'd have one heck of a player.
All right, Dean DeVell here, for a name I don't recognize here. It says he's been listening for a long, long time. Has kind of two questions here. Sticking with the pick of Joey Porter Jr. in the second round of the 2023 draft, and having the current roster and subsequent draft picks remaining the same, JPJ and Jackson/Trice as your outside cornerbacks, the slot cornerback open for Bishop or Sutton to fill, and then establish O-line depth by drafting Fautano in the first round of the 2024 draft to complement and challenge Jones and Dan Moore for a starting tackle. Okay, I guess he wants this to decide into two routes here. Number two, drafting Brian Branch with the first pick of the second round in 2023 to stabilize the void at slot cornerback, settling on Jones and Moore as the right and left tackles, respectively, and drafting Quinyon Mitchell over Troy Fautano in the first round of the 2024 draft. Basically, he says his question is would you prefer the roster of Mitchell and Jackson/Trice with Branch in the slot over the value of additional depth on the O-line with Fautano and the cornerback tandem of JPJ, Jackson, Trice, Bishop, and Sutton? Oh boy.
Yeah, I'm trying to follow all that. I don't know.
In other words, as is right now, or drafting Brian Branch in the first round, and then this first pick of the second round, but going with Quinyon Mitchell over Tunnel in the first round.
And Frazier's still my center. Is that my understanding of that correctly? Branch would have been last year, round 2.
I would imagine that he's the kind of most of the rest.
No Benton.
Yeah.
I just don't spend a lot of time trying to rewrite history. I'll occasionally make reference to, I like Creed Humphrey. Obviously, a lot coming out of that 21 draft. He would have been my pick, but it's all spilt milk. I'm not mad at Pittsburgh for trying to beef up their offensive line. That's the approach Omar Khan has clearly taken, and it was probably sorely needed. Now, did you pick the right players? And obviously, Fautanu is such an unknown with the injury that it's really hard to evaluate. Who would you rather have? All that kind of stuff. It's impossible.
Yeah.
We can go back and become great GMs looking back at previous drafts and trying to slot the right players in the right ways. Yeah, Mitchell and Branch would have been great for the secondary. I really liked Mitchell coming out of Toledo. The way he played at the Senior Bowl from other reports last year was really impressive. But I just don't spend a lot of time trying to figure all that stuff out and rewrite history.
I understand the question. It's just, I mean, you go down so many rabbit holes like that. I mean, Brian Branch is a very talented guy. Quinyon Mitchell looks like he's going to be fine in the NFL, obviously based on what we've seen so far there. I mean, 2 really talented players for sure. Tony at the Grange. Let's see. Thank you again for the great coverage. The other night on the YouTube live episode, you said the biggest need in the upcoming draft is wide receiver. Trying not to poke the bear here, but is it the biggest need in the draft? Quarterback. I understand that you have Wilson, who is more than likely to be back next year. I also understand the class of quarterbacks may be small next year, but don't we desperately need to find our franchise quarterback of the future? On a related note, could you list all the starting quarterbacks in the league that were drafted in the last 3 years of Big Ben's career? In my mind, these are all the quarterbacks that could potentially be starting for the Steelers right now. Every time I see Josh Allen throw a pass, I keep thinking that could have been our guy. I just can't remember what year he was drafted relative to Ben's retirement. We're not going to sit here and go through all the quarterbacks, drafted in the last 3 years of Big Ben's career. I mean, just look at Purdy, right? Last pick of the 40, last pick of that draft, that the year that he was out and all like that. I mean, yeah, you could go down the list there. The thing is here, that this draft class is not great, supposedly at the quarterback position. Drafting where you're likely to draft in the first round. Here's the thing. Regardless of what happens with Wilson, assuming they don't get back Wilson and Fields, which you should obviously know by the time the draft rolls around, I would not be totally against drafting a quarterback in the, somewhere in this, just to test your, draft process, developing skills and all like that. Have maybe a guy that you can look at as a potential backup for the next several years, and who knows, maybe beyond that. Obviously, you're throwing darts later, at a weak quarterback class. But other than trading up early in the first round of this draft, I mean, franchise quarterback, it doesn't seem doable this year.
Yeah, I don't see it as an option this year. Josh Allen, by the way, was 2018 draft, so would have been not one of Ben's final 3 years because he played 19, 20, and 21. Yeah, I don't know what the general thought or point there is.
He's just saying that he don't want to poke the bear, but isn't biggest need in the draft a quarterback.
I mean, I get the point. If you're either a team with a franchise quarterback or a team searching for one, but how do you acquire that franchise quarterback is more difficult. No, I think there's some bit of a misconception that says you have to have a top 3 pick and Pittsburgh never picks there, ergo they can't get a franchise quarterback. I think there's some inaccuracies with that thought. A lot of those top quarterbacks don't hit. The success rate's about a coin flip. And frankly, you can find franchise quarterbacks later in the first round. Josh Allen went 7th overall. Mahomes went, 10th or 12th overall. Lamar Jackson was the last pick of the first round. The Ravens took a 25-year-old former baseball player in the Pirate system tight end before they took Lamar Jackson, who backed up for him. So there's a couple different components to it, but I think they're going to re-sign Russ, and that's going to really, placate the need to go out there and get a quarterback early. As you said, in a quarterback class, it's not looking all too sharp.
All right, Rob Jones, question about 2025 compensatory picks. He says, with the possibility of losing Najee, Justin Fields, Daniels, Moore, etc., do we have the best chance for one of our best compensatory picks in some time? He says, if they re-sign Russ and extend George Pickens, might be a better chances as not having money to spend on many big free agents. Thanks and Happy New Year, Rob says. Well, first and foremost, remember, Rob, that any unrestricted guys that you lose in free agency this year, you won't get the compensatory value / picks for that until 2026. So those don't turn around in the same offseason year. With that said, you do have a good point there that, depending on the contracts that, where they land and value, it could end up being well, at least as of late, they haven't had much of anything in compensatory, but we could be looking at 2026 of having, maybe a couple, even at least one third round compensatory in there, maybe, depending on how the checklist balances out and all like that. But point taken that they might have a nice little selection of compensatory picks for 2026, but keep in mind that is for 2026. It will not help them in 2025.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I got a question in my mailbag about that yesterday. Yeah, they could. It's impossible to predict, and the comp formula is very wonky, and it's a labyrinth to try to figure out how all that works. We leave that to Nick Forte and over the cap. But yeah, they'll probably have something. I'm guessing a fourth, a fifth, something like that. When everything kind of comes out in the wash. But the only thing it could change is, could Omar Khan be more aggressive in trade some future 2026 picks in anticipation of getting some comp picks next year, or for 2020, for next year, for 2026, potentially. But like you said, Dave, it's not going to have the most meaningful short-term impact.
Right. Let's take one more from Danny Porter here. Been following Depot and listening to the podcast since 2008. Bless your heart, Danny.
Thank you, Danny.
Since Hurricane Helene hit, has been my escape from the recovery effort. All right, glad we could help there. My community had 6 foot of storm surge, and rebuilding is slow and frustrating process. All right, hope that gets better there. The podcast provides an opportunity to get away from all that. The banter between Dave and Alex, along with the best Steelers news and analysis, something I look forward to. All right, well, appreciate that. On to the question here. To me, the best offensive game plan this season was against Cincinnati. I think the Steelers should use the formula pass to set up the run. Teams are stacking the box, begging the Steelers to throw it. They are considering paying Wilson $40 million. Why not oblige them? Your thoughts. Thanks again for everything you do. Well, if you even or listen to this show a little bit earlier there and listen to the recap coming out of that game, and Alex talking about heavy personnel. If the Bengals want to have these 5 down fronts, Alex and I are on board with you, Danny.
Yeah, well, thank you, Danny, for your listenership, and hopefully everything gets rebuilt. I know that's it's been a terrible event down there in the Carolinas, so appreciate all the support and certainly pulling for you. Yeah, no, I think you're right on the game plan. We'll see. Pittsburgh's able to model that. I think the issue is, though, the Bengals know what their faults were in that first game. Do they have a different approach the second time around? It's why it is tough in some respects to beat a team twice one season, because when you win, you sit there and say, okay, do we just have the same game plan? When you lose, you kind of go to the drawing board, see what didn't work, and how do you correct, and usually going to be more likely to have a different approach to the second game when you're on the losing end of that first one. So we'll see how Pittsburgh and the Bengals play things. I think it's a fair point overall to be more aggressive early. But in some ways, Pittsburgh was more aggressive, but they also just took a profit. They took what was there with those checkdowns. And so it was, in some sense, coming out throwing, but also throwing in kind of these elongated runs that became screens and checkdowns and boots and that kind of stuff. So it's going to be that fun chess match, and we'll see what happens.
All right. Appreciate, got several more in here, but we're running long as we usually do. Had a lot of housekeeping to get to today. Early in the show, broke down the Bengals game and gave our picks and all like that. So now we wait and see what happens Saturday night at Acrisure Stadium. Hopefully we're talking about a Steelers win on Monday, but regardless of what happens, we will be back on Monday breaking it all down for you, talking about who the Steelers play in the first round of the wild card. Where there's a very good chance by the time the Ravens game ends, a extremely strong chance. Here's the thing. If the Ravens win, we will know who all the Steelers opponents for 2025 will be. The only three that we don't know right now for sure are based on finish in division by all the teams, but they are sewn up at least to the point that if we know the Steelers are finishing second, we can complete that all out. So we'll have that. Make sure to pay attention to the site throughout the weekend. There, we will be updating everything in real time, obviously. And Alex and I'll be back on Monday discussing the game and everything moving forward into the playoffs. So you can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you'd like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. Good job today, Alex. Enjoyed that. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.